Hey there, Safecrackers, get your combinations ready because it is time for the Comic Vault, a vault full of comics for you and me to look at on our show. Yeah, jazz hands. Okay, so thanks for tuning in, guys. I have some comics here sent to us by our awesome viewer, Hakelis. Hakelis, thank you for sending us stuff. I appreciate it. We appreciate it. And moving right along, we have Magic the Gathering here. He sent us 5 Magic the Gathering issues. In fact, he sent us 2 copies of one, Magic the Gathering, The Spell Thief #1. He sent us one with the card and one without the card. So thank you very much. We do appreciate that. I'm going to see if this guy has... Nope. There is no subtitle. This is Magic the Gathering numbers 1 through 4, and then Magic the Gathering, The Spell Thief #1. I enjoyed this series. I thought it was a good effort. I thought they tried. I think the writer has good instincts. I think that he knows what's interesting. I think he knows that there are certain things that need to be in a story in order for your character to have personality. I think he knows how to craft a person that you care about. I think he has trouble lacing plot points together. I think he has trouble fleshing out characterization. But I don't necessarily know this for certain. The writer's name is Matt Forbeck. So I think Matt Forbeck is on the road to being somebody that I can enjoy. But I think this issue is a little, or this series, this 4-issue series is a little half-formed. The Spell Thief is currently running, and I'm not sure how many issues is going to be in The Spell Thief. But of course, as I said, 1 through 4 is a complete story. So, well, sort of a complete story. It ends on a cliffhanger that bleeds over into Spell Thief. So, let's see here. I have some notes. There are some cool, fun ideas in here. Essentially, what the first issue is about is this guy named Dak, who is a planeswalker and a spell thief. I don't know if the spell thief thing is just is part of being a planeswalker, but I don't think so. I think it's 2 significantly different things. A planeswalker is a guy who can jump between dimensions. Now, what's kind of fun about that is that they use that a little bit to say that he can jump between dimensions, but or dimensions or planes of existence. I would assume that's why. Planes of existence, planeswalkers, so he can jump between them. Or walk between them, because then he'd be called a planes jumper. I don't know, but I think that what he does with the planeswalker thing is kind of fun. It doesn't necessarily play in there a lot. He gives him reasons for planeswalking, but he gives him reasons for not doing it. And there are times when you're just starting to think, why doesn't he just jump out of there? Forbeck will supply us with a reason. Dak will say something to the effect of, I would, but I've already come this far and I need the thing that I'm chasing. So, it's a little... Sure, maybe you can call that slightly contrived, but I think it's an adequate way to say that his planeswalking ability, while it's an interesting thing about him, it's not the only thing about him that should make him interesting. The thing we're really focusing on is the fact that he is a spell thief, and that he uses these abilities. So, what's a spell thief? A spell thief is a guy who can take a spell from a magical item and use it himself. That's kind of cool. I think that's a great idea. Now, these ideas are not necessarily his. I'm not saying they're not, but the idea is that this is Magic the Gathering, a comic book, and Magic the Gathering is something that has significantly predated this issue that came out in 2011. So, last year, at the time of the making of this video, anyway. But I think that this Magic the Gathering issue is worthwhile, and it just pains me to have so many complaints about it, but I do think that there are some good instincts here. Okay, so in the first issue, he steals, because he's not just a spell thief, he's also a thief, a regular thief. He steals a dagger of some kind that essentially it is supposed to, and I don't know if we find this out at the end of the first issue or if we find this out at the beginning of the second issue, but what the dagger's purpose is As long as you feed it some kind of blood, you can control vampires. And I think that's an interesting idea. Now, I will say that at this point, especially with the whole... And it stinks, it really stinks to have to think of vampires and Twilight at the same time. But in the midst of this vampire craze, where vampires are essentially being defanged, it's interesting that we have a story about somebody controlling vampires. They are vampires in this book. They're blood-sucking creatures of the night. They're not good people. They're evil. They kill people, and they enjoy it. So you have that. You at least have a vampire as being seen as a vampire, but there is still a neutering, or as I said earlier, a defanging of these creatures because of this dagger. Right now, for me, my palate says that I am so tired of stories that involve the neutered vampire. The only stories about vampires that I really want are ones that make me fear vampires again. It bothers me that we don't have any of this stuff. Now, maybe at this point trying to make a vampire frightening is like saying, let's make puppies frightening, because vampires have become such a regular being in pop culture that we all know what they are. We're not freaked out by them anymore. Which, what I have to say to that is, just find a different way of making it happen. Near Dark is a good example of a different kind of vampire that's still pretty frightening. Granted, that movie wasn't recent, but still. Most of what happens in here are battle scenes. That's mostly what this thing is comprised of. And a comic book, yes, battle scenes are very theatrical. Battle scenes are very... it's something that's easy to look at. It's something that takes up pages, and it's something that can keep a person's interest, because it's fun to watch choreography and fighting. It's fun to watch people defend for their lives because they're actually doing something. But it's sort of the easy way out. Now, sometimes, especially in sword and sorcery, fantasy type comics, you have to have battle scenes. I'm not saying that they're not welcome. I'm just saying that that seems to be the guts, the driving force of each issue. The things that drives me nuts about this issue is that, or about this 4-issue series, is that a lot of his detective skills that he has to use, not necessarily to say that he's a detective, but the things that he finds out that leads him into the next issue take place between issues. They are not given to us in scene. They are given to us in a largely unnecessary voiceover, which is something that bothers me as well. This story does not need a voiceover. What it needs is 2 more issues. The story really needs a couple more issues. I sort of feel like the writer is looking at some of his ideas and saying, well, that's not good enough to be compelling in scene. Yes, it is. I want to know how this guy comes across these vampires. I think it's between issues 1 and 2. The second issue ends, and then the third issue starts up in the middle of a fight. Actually, oh, yep, exactly, it is this one. The first issue ends, and then the second issue starts up in the middle of a fight, and Dak, the protagonist, just managed to jump into the middle of the fight for no apparent reason. Does he really know these people? Do we care? That's the thing. I find myself asking these questions all these time. Why is he here? He wasn't here last time. He didn't say that he was looking for these people last time. He wasn't looking for the people in the bar where these vampires are attacking these people. Or, I think it was a bar. Anyway, in the building where these vampires are attacking these people. He wasn't looking for them. He wasn't... All I can really figure out is that he's looking for vampires. But if that's the case, why would you be looking for vampires in a bar? Why wouldn't you be looking for vampires in a place where vampires tend to congregate? It seems weird to me. Especially, somebody's being attacked, you wouldn't necessarily assume that it's vampires. You stick your nose into something, you might get it cut off. That's all I'm saying. And this guy doesn't necessarily... He displays traits of valiance when it's convenient. I'll say this, that I feel like the writer is wanting to make him sort of a lovable rogue, which he succeeds to some extent. it drives me nuts that he just randomly finds these people, and that between issues, things that would be significant to see happens. I do not need a voiceover to tell me what happened between the issues. Because so much of this is just left up to voiceover and it happens in between issues, characterization gets rushed. I think in the comic medium, there is, especially among indie comics, because a lot of people, they have love for comics, and what they want to see happen with comics are things that they grew up with. And they know, I believe that people know what sophisticated storytelling is and sophisticated characterization. I believe people understand what this thing is. Some people don't care, and some people think that all you need to do is have a character who is dealing with problems. Okay, sure, your character is being proactive to a certain extent. Well, that's the thing, is that you can't even necessarily say proactive. Because if a character is dealing with stuff that's falling in his lap, that's entirely plot-driven. A character-driven thing is more likely to build characterization than something that's plot-driven, because then all we really see is how this guy reacts to bad stuff happening to him. And now, earlier I said that he has a certain amount of valiance when it's convenient to him. I feel like the writer is treating this character sort of like his child, and he doesn't necessarily want this person to have negative traits. I understand, I feel like we have a trend in pop culture where we're trying to give negative traits to our... we're trying to make our protagonists as unlikable as possible and see if people still like them. So to some extent, for this person to say that I want my protagonist to be a likable person through and through, I'm okay with that. But I feel like we need to have more about this guy. Why is he a thief and still... well, we do get a little bit about his past, and the things about his past are largely not fleshed out within this. So we find out that basically his hometown, we find this out in the second or third issue, basically his hometown is slaughtered by this woman that he's chasing. And she uses vampires as a weapon. Now, I think it's significant that, I think it should be significant that she uses vampires as a weapon. I find it to be difficult to buy that it's not. Essentially, by the time you get to the end of the series, you realize that she, or at least by the time you get to the end of the series, they've given you no reason, and they've given you no indicator that they will have a reason. What I believe that this thing was for, these 4 issues, was to set up a recurring character with a recurring villain. And that's a problem for me. If this is only a setup, then I really don't care about his past. I really don't care about this woman that he's chasing, especially because she has no interesting qualities in and of herself. She seems to have certain abilities that at least echo his to some extent, which it's only because they're both mages and they fight. Although there is a really weird line in here in the last issue where Dex says, "I'm not a fighter mage, but I'll do my best." And then he pulls out really effective spells that he can run all he wants, but then when he's stuck into a corner he says, "Well, looks like it's time to pull out one of those weapon spells that I have," and then he just totally ruins a person with his non-fighter spells. I don't buy it, but it was really funny to me. Why did she choose vampires? Well, by the time you get into issue 1 of the next series, the vampires have gone away. It's really not important that they are vampires or that she used vampires. So, since we don't have any indicator that they will be important, my assumption is that they aren't important. Why did the villain attack his hometown? Maybe we're going to find out in the next series. Maybe there's even a trilogy. I don't know. Who knows? But we don't find out in this issue. Losing my voice. We don't find out in this issue, and I don't feel like we have any true resolution in sight. I really feel like this is a setup for some characters that they want to see keep going. To some extent, what this really feels like is, and maybe this is the point, but I don't think it should be. To some extent, I feel like this is a setup to show us the abilities of characters, or of cards within the Magic the Gathering, the game. So, they take certain cards and say, this is what it's like. A person has a bunch of cards that they can choose from, and they've decided to organize them all together, and then they play the cards. So we're using vampires, now we're using goblins. I have a spell that can counter these things. I have a spell that can damage your goblins. that does not necessarily make for good storytelling. Excuse me, that does not make for good storytelling. That is a showcase. If that's all you wanted to do, it would have been better if to just had some fight scenes with some really random creatures shoved together. I don't like the fact... Now, maybe what they're trying to say here is that because these cards are typically chosen specifically to go into a deck, that they should work together, and that playing a game of Magic is kind of like a story in and of itself. It's not, because there's no protagonist in a game of Magic, unless you're talking about the two characters playing. Now, the thing about the two characters playing, what I've always found fun about Magic is essentially it's two gods. If you're a character, you are a god controlling creatures, because only somebody with supernatural or deity-like abilities could truly control all of the creatures on the field. I don't buy that this game is truly a story, because as I said, it's just the clash of two gods. There's no protagonist, there's no rising action, it's just one person trying to beat down another. It's like saying boxing would have a storyline to it. Now, you can add a storyline to boxing, you can add a storyline to a game. This thing, I think, is trying, but I wonder if Forbeck's hands are tied. I wonder if he's not really given free rein to try, or to really do what he wanted to do. The villain is extremely stereotypical. We really don't know anything about her. She just kills for the sake of killing. She enjoys it. I'm assuming it's out of greed, but I don't know for certain. Maybe we'll find out in Magic the Gathering Spell Thief, but personally I'm not interested enough to keep reading. I do appreciate that Hakel has sent these to us, because I have been interested in reading some Magic the Gathering, and I do feel like there are some good ideas in here, and I do feel like some of these cards' abilities can transfer well to the comic book medium, and we can have fun seeing what those cards are saying that they do within the course of a game. That's a lot of fun, but it's not necessarily, doesn't necessarily merit an entire series, especially one that has no resolution at the end and just wants to carry over into the sequel. Thanks for watching the Comic Vault, guys. Again, you guys can buy stuff from the Comic Vault if you go to wearegeeks.nerds.com and click on the Comic Vault. That's right. Buy stuff if you like, or don't. If you have stuff that you want to get rid of, stuff that you want us to read, stuff that you want us to review, you can send it to Geekvolution, P.O. Box 14183, Lenexa, Kansas 66285. Thanks for watching the Comics Vault. Thanks for playing Comic Zone. It's a video game. Thanks for watching the Comic Vault. I'm Vince. We'll catch you next time.